Hi, it's Michelle Ockers. Welcome to my What I Learned in November 2018 video, where I reflect on 3 things I've learned every month. I do this as a way of encouraging others to reflect on their own learning and recognise that we all learn on a continuous basis, which leads me to my first reflection on learning for the month. I did recorded a podcast episode of Learning Uncut, which I co-host with Karen Maloney. We're doing a special on professional development, which will be published or aired on the 8th of January 2019. And in this episode, rather than talk to a guest about a project they've worked on, we actually had a discussion joined by Neil von Upt, who had over 4 years as the programs manager with the Australian Institute of Training and Development. And we basically drew on the answers of our guests from 2018 to the question, what's the biggest thing you do for your own professional development? We also reflected on the answer to that for ourselves and what 2018 has looked like. And what I realised is I have done next to no formal learning in 2018. But gosh, I've learned a lot and gotten a lot better at what I do. And the way I've done that is through my work and through collaboration and conversation with others. And I give an example of that in the podcast. So it helped me to learn a bit more about my own learning style, which is very practical, very application driven, and very collaborative. The second thing I learned was related to a big shift in my business that I've been working on for some time and that I announced in November, and that is a partnership with Towards Maturity, who are based in the UK. I won't go into the details of that partnership. That has been announced on my website and also in an article on LinkedIn if you want to take a look. But one of the things I did as part of launching that partnership this month was a webinar with Laura Overton from Towards Maturity, where we talked about learning transformation and how to make a breakthrough in your learning transformation journey. In the process of preparing for the webinar, I really got to dig into the most recent Towards Maturity research from their last annual report, the Transformation Curve, which looked at what is the transformation journey? What is the typical pattern of the transformation journey in learning and development as we seek to add strategic value and move to the right to become a learning organisation? And what that research showed is that it's not a straightforward path. It's not a linear progression. It's actually more like a series of S-curves which come from product innovation, from the product life cycle. As you take an idea or a level of performance, you introduce something, you go through a growth period, it matures, and then if you don't do something differently, you start going into decline, just like the product life cycle. But the data that Towards Maturity have from their benchmark of over 7,500 learning and development leaders over a period of 15 years shows that you can make certain choices at these pivot points between stages on the maturity curve that will move you forward and move you into the next stage. And they've identified 4 stages, which we unpacked in the webinar, reported in the Transformation Curve. But I really feel well equipped now in the work I'm doing with Towards Maturity to be able to look at where an organisation is on the transformation curve and talk not just about generally what people are doing at that most mature stage, but what you need to do now to move forward from the point you are at. So I'm going to share a link to the webinar recording, both on my blog site and on YouTube underneath this particular What I Learned video for anyone who's interested in taking a look, or you can just get in touch straight directly with me if you want to have a chat about the transformation curve and what I have learned through the Towards Maturity research about the process of having a greater impact and transforming learning in organisations. And the third thing I learned that I'd like to talk about is some recent research by Good Practice on 70-20-10 called The Evolution of 70-20-10. Now, for anyone who is not aware, if you're a learning professional, you're probably going to be aware of this shorthand way of referring to the key ways that people learn. So I'm not even going to use these numbers again. What I'm going to tell you is people learn formally, and they learn informally as they work through their experience and from interactions, conversations, connections, collaboration with others. I think it's time we stop talking about this particular framework. It is clear from this piece of research that it's been applied across most organisations. It impacts the work of many learning professionals in a range of ways. It's not a prescription, it's a nudge, if you like, or a starting point to encourage us to look at a broader ways of approaching the sustainment and enablement of learning in our organisations and enriching our own roles and the working lives of those we're there to support. So moving forward, my thinking is this report shows us that the approach is embedded, that it's very flexible, it's not prescriptive, that there's a whole range of ways, depending on our specific context, that we can engage with learners and learning and empower people to learn in our organisation. So let's move on from the debate and just get on with our role in this, this broader, more enjoyable, more enriching way. This is going to be my last What I Learned video for the year. So thank you to those of you who've been watching these videos. Hopefully some of you are getting some value out of them. And I'm hoping it inspires people to actually share what they're learning more broadly as a way of role modelling and opening up the conversation around learning in whatever networks, organisations, interactions you move in. Have a safe and happy Christmas, and I look forward to engaging more with everybody in 2019.